The shadow of the weary heart. Truth cuts the dark like a flaming dart. Voices rising strong to lift the call. This is the time we give it all. Lynne Scott Haggerman bringing the fire. Words that ignite hearts burning higher. Faith and power, no chains can bind. Step into the light and leave fear behind.
Welcome to Patriot Prayers Network. I'm Lynne Scott Haggerman, where faith meets truth, fear has no place, and courage anchored in Christ leads the conversation. I'm so glad you're here. I'm a survivor of child trafficking and medical experimentation that occurred underground at a U.S.-based university medical center tied to declassified government MKUltra programs. I am the voice they tried to silence, and I am silent no more. Praise God. Today, I stand as an international award-winning human resource consultant, a marathoner, and a weightlifter, living proof that restoration is possible in mind, body, and spirit with the Lord Jesus Christ. My calling is clear and unwavering. I'm to expose the darkness, elevate survivors and whistleblowers, reveal the truth, restore lives, and protect our little children. This broadcast airs Tuesday through Friday and Sundays at 2 o'clock Central Time across all of the Patriots Prayer Network broadcast platforms. Please visit qgrit.org. That's God's aftercare plan for the little ones once they're rescued from above ground and below ground trafficking, as well as to help adults with any type of trauma. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter. Also, be sure to visit liveyoungerwithlynne.com, where I'm an independent LifeWave distributor. LifeWave won the Stem Cell Innovator of the Year award. And so it's time to get healthy, stay healthy, because we have work to do for such a time as this. Now let's continue bringing everything into the light and presence of God. Right now, today we're going to talk about Mexico. Mexico has been in chaos after a military raid that killed a drug lord. Retaliation has exploded. We've seen flaming roadblocks, torched vehicles, soldiers down, tourists that are trapped across over 20 states. Live from the front lines, my guest and podcaster, Simone Anderson from Lost in the Translation on Rumble, is here to join us. She went for a vacation, and now she's stuck in this chaos. She's going to share exactly what she's seen firsthand. But this show isn't just south of the border conversation. We're going to have an unfiltered, frontline reality and deeper truth, because the veil is lifting. So everybody stay locked into your seats. We're going to have a show. So Simone, how are you, my friend? I know we've been texting since you've been, I'm going to put in air quotes, vacationing. So tell it, how are you doing?
Everybody's feeling much more relaxed today. Of course, the first day was very stressful because we didn't really know what was going on, and there really didn't seem to be any kind of police response, even in the areas. We kind of got the tail end of it. I'm in an area called Romantica, which is the old town, and it's primarily Canadian retirement. So the cartels don't have a beef with the Canadians. So I don't think what they were mainly doing is there's only, if you've ever been in Puerto Vallarta, there's one street in and there's one street out. So they were blocking everything by burning the cars, and you could see that people were just driving down the street and the cartels would come up and get out or we're going to shoot you. And you could just see the people fleeing. And of course, that was scary. And we just had the tail end here, but we watched all day from the hillside and you could see the fires exploding. They had some rockets. I did have a young Mexican girl on the show yesterday because she lives in an area where the real epicenter was. And she was saying there was helicopters, and there was actually helicopters that were shooting down at some of the people. So I'm not sure if I'm assuming it was the military shooting at the cartel members or the criminals. But again, it's hard to tell whose those helicopters are, because the CIA is, as we probably discussed many times on your channel, we are literally, according to my military insiders in the US, this is a joint FBI Mexican government operation. And the CIA, like we're fighting in Iran and Venezuela, are literally our CIA, Colombia, Nicaragua, our CIA since the end of the World War, when they brought all the Nazis here, have been implementing strategies to collapse the world, bring about the New World Order. And Mexico is, between the drug cartels and the human trafficking, they're reporting on him as a drug cartel leader and one of the most powerful. I think El Mencho means something like the bloodthirsty one or something like that.
Wow. Okay.
And he killed the person who was above him, who had motivated him. I'm just getting this history from locals, so correct. And but he is also in business with the CIA. And a while back, the CIA didn't do anything when they shot down one of our airplanes that was doing the reconnaissance for this mission. So apparently he was caught with a mistress or a lover late in the night. And originally they didn't know if he'd survive, but apparently he died in the helicopter on the way to medical service. So this is part of what we've been seeing in the United States. I know a lot of people are upset, and I personally am concerned about the ICE raids because the government has been heavily involved in the human trafficking, and where are they taking some of these people? So I do have concerns on that. What did we do? The same companies and government entities that were involved in trafficking and delivering all these children all over the United States in the middle of the night for the last 4 years are in some instances the same ones who are getting the people. So I hope that's been clearly defined. I'm sure they're not doing anything like that, but you have to understand that the governments are heavily involved in all of this child trafficking, the money laundering, and the drug cartels. And so we're kind of seeing a culmination all over the world right now. They were planning on the reason they got in Los Angeles and San Francisco and some of the places where ICE has been is because they're coming out and taking the cartels who have set up in these cities. And when we see the 9 billion being stolen, say, for instance, that we just heard about in Minnesota is one of the top 10 areas for trafficked children. In Minnesota, basically, if your child is raped or your daughter is raped, most of the time the men don't even get any prison time. So it's an open oasis for pedophiles and people who want to and they also have a large Somali population. And I'm sure there's a lot of wonderful Somali people, but Somalia, slavery is still legal. They officially made it illegal about 2 years ago. Child forced marriage is still illegal. Genital mutilation is normal. So, of course, there's being trafficked, probably a lot of child brides and stuff that are coming out of Africa, 8 and 9-year-old girls. In the Muslim culture, you can marry a 9-year-old girl or an 11-year-old boy. So we have all these different things that are, and, of course, most Muslim people aren't doing that. But when you go to some of these cultures that are living, 1,000 years behind and basically are being run by warlords, a major business of the illegal, and everyone wants to glamorize we have all these movies in the States about the mafia. Well, what do you think they were doing when they were bringing all the bootlegging in and running these speakeasies? They were capturing women all over Europe and forcing them into sexual slavery. So the mafia has heavily been involved in the human trafficking event. And if we even look here, the conquistadors and the Jesuits control Mexico. If you wanted to see who the Caesar of the Roman Empire, it would be the King of Spain. So he's still a very heavily political person. Of course, he directly reports to the Pope, who is the ruler of this planet. Under the Admiralty law system, you and I have discussed this in the past, where they literally own our birth certificates and they trade us like animals in the stock market. The Pope claimed ownership of the world. I'm trying to remember the name of the document. I'm not a Latin speaker. I'll think of it in a minute. Sure. But anyway, since that time, we are all captured into this system. That's what people refer to the matrix. The word matrix itself means womb. A lot of people think it's a game or a movie, but it actually literally means womb, because they capture the babies in the womb of the mother under Admiralty law. and they use the sewers that connect the houses in the cities to claim ownership over the land. So we could go into that in another event, but literally that system is under collapse. That system is controlled by the political structure known as the Whore of Babylon. And that Pope is the leader of the political structure. So what we're seeing right now, I know that you have a lot of viewers who are Christians today. And if you look at the Bible, it tells you the beast will devour the whore. The whore, because the beast gave the power its whore. So Satan gave the political system, which is the ancient Roman tax system. Rome never fell, and the Pope leads that system today. And as you can see, all of the papal industries, the movie industry, the financial industry, the Catholic and Anglican Church themselves that are being sued and have nobody attending them anymore, that is the Whore of Babylon, and that structure is being taken down. But the beast will rise with the 10 kings of the earth, and they will battle God. So I know a lot of most religions today are teaching that we are in end times. And whether end times is 10 years or 50 years or 100, the Antichrist will change God's laws, and he will change the time. And so according right now to the Vatican calendar, we are at 2026. But if you look to the true calendar that takes us from the time of Genesis, we are about 7,000 something. So they've completely changed time, history, and God's law. And so we're in the fruition of that right now. And the Admiralty law system that claimed us into the birth certificates run out of the City of London is the one that went bankrupt. The Bank of England that owns all the Federal Reserves in the world went bankrupt the day we locked the world down for COVID. The world has never been locked down during wartime, during the Black Plague. That has never occurred. It's because they control us and live in the Admiralty law system, run out of the City of London and owned by the Pope. 78% of the world's money goes through the Vatican. And I truly believe, I went to Catholic school. I took my grandmother to church every Sunday until she passed away. I'm not a Catholic myself, and this has nothing to do with me doubting people of faith who are Catholics. We're talking about the political structure. The Pope himself identifies himself through gematria as the Antichrist.
He does.
Yeah, the Vatican system itself, the Vatican means divine serpent or serpent's house. If you go into the amphitheater of the Pope, it's a snake's head. That's and right. The Pope speaks from the mouth of the serpent. So this isn't a criticism of everybody. I know people love their traditions, but I challenge you to actually open your Bible and see if there's anything that's being done in the Catholic Church, including being put to death for uncovering pedophilia. There's a doctrine in the Catholic Church that if you expose the pedophilia, you're put to death. And actually there was, I want to say Dolan, but there was a guy from the East Coast who was exposing it over the last few years, and he was killed in his office. So this is the way it's done. I'm not sure if you're aware of the International Tribunal for the Crimes of Church and State. Over the summer, one of the cardinals in the Vatican, if you're aware of the Ninth Circle cult, where they murder, torture, abuse children, and then they eat them. In order to be a cardinal or the Pope, you have to participate in this Ninth Circle. It happens certain times a year in the tomb of Lucifer, which is under the statue of St. Peter. And one of the cardinals who was indicted under this, the Pope was indicted, King Charles was indicted, the head of the United Church of Canada. He's been arrested. He's whistleblowing. They raided a bunch of these Ninth Circle events on Halloween this year, and they saved the children, and they brought the perpetrators in, specifically in Vancouver, at the Vancouver Club. I don't know if you spent a lot of time in Vancouver, but they had actually made it known that they were going to be doing these raids, and they went ahead and did them. And they used the tunnel systems that come in from the port, and they bring in Asian children there into the port of England. And they have the 9 Mile Club there in Vancouver, where they go off a certain amount of distance, and they do snuff movies and stuff with the Canadian elite. So we're really in the fall of Babylon, because all these structures, slavery is part of Babylon. We live in Admiralty law. A lot of people think that the blacks were not freed under slavery. They were emancipated. The word emancipated literally means that you don't have physical walls, but you're still a slave. A lot of people, we've got Juneteenth coming up. That guy stands on the steps and he announces, "You are now free slaves." Doesn't say you're free men. Doesn't say you're God's people. So we're trapped into that system right now, and that's what we're fighting everywhere in the world. So they had to take the cartel members out of the cities because our cities have been taken over. If you've been to LA or San Francisco lately, they're completely empty. I was there Halloween weekend, and they're high satanic. The satanic energy, if you talk to priests who've done exorcists and people who are in that, San Francisco and Los Angeles are epicenters of this. Salem, Massachusetts, Minneapolis. And so our job is to confront difficult things and have our faith in God, that he's exposing the truth to us. Because a lot of people think of the word apocalypse. Describe apocalypse to me in your mind. What would you say that meant?
Well, the way most people talk about apocalypse is the end of absolutely everything.
No, but the word apocalypse literally translates in ancient Hebrew to the unveiling. The veil will be lifted and we will see the world as it truly is, because he who speaks truth tells what is right. Proverbs.
Amen.
Right? So this is our duty. Even people are laughing at us. I intermittently, even with people who understand what I'm saying, they'll get mad at me for a few months and not call me because I say something about someone they like, right? Someone, you know, we have to put these paradigms aside. It's us against them.
That's right.
It's the people of faith. It's the people who are trying to live their life, raise their children, and do what's right. Because we're in the battle and we're in the end battle. So like I was saying before, the whore is being destroyed, as it says in the Bible. But who is rising is the beast. So who is the beast and who are the 10 kings? So I'm going to probably do a show on that at some later point, but this is really where we're at. It's been really nice to be down here in Mexico. I've met some young friends and a lot of young people, because they were, you know, the Catholic Church, there's a lot of repetition. People don't really feel spoken to many times, especially that's why a lot of young people aren't, because it's a lot of repetition. And so here, that's the major influence in Mexico. So I've been really interested. I met a bunch of some young people and they asked me a lot about God, about faith, what I was thinking, what they should study. And they're like, well, how long should we study? And I'm like, I've been studying the first 10 chapters of Genesis for a year because I actually want the Hebrew translation of those words because they've corrupted our language and many of the words we use are opposite, right? They're like illegal, illegitimate, Illuminati. God is the illumination. He is not the illuminator. God is light, right? So when you put ill in front of it, when it says Illuminati, that's the sickness of the light. That's literally what it's translating to. Illegitimate. That's a negative thing. God is illumination, right? So these are the things that we need to understand. We need to understand the true text of the word. Modern religion is also under fire because it's part of the beast system. Because it's been infiltrated to lead people in the opposite direction. And I always say to people, is your church doing this? Is your church doing that? Do they have yoga? Are they, and I know it sounds kind of crazy, but yoga is actually a religious practice. It doesn't mean you can't do stretching exercises or whatever. Yeah. But if you read the extracted books from the book of Adam and Eve, the Catholic Church removed like 20 books from the Bible, and they also completely distorted the translations of many of the books. And there's plenty of books out there and stuff you can read. But the Ethiopian text is the most ancient text. And they have had the original doctrine. Abraham had 3 wives and they never talk about his 3rd wife. And she was Ethiopian. And she took all the original text. So when they talk about the families of Abraham, if you wanted to, like, it's illegal to do a test in Israel today because those people are converted Turks who were Baal worshipers and were forcibly converted by the Tsar of Russia and the head of the empire. And I lived in Turkey for a while, and they call him the Dolme. So it tells in the Bible that there will be a false tribe that will distort God's vision. And this isn't my opinion. There's many, many, people that belong to that faith that are God-loving people, and they're raising their family right. Again, I'm talking about the elite political structures that rule the world we live in under the Admiralty law system. So it can get really confusing when you're, even in I think it's around Genesis 10, where God tells Noah, the line of Japheth, which is the Turks and the Asians, will dwell in the house of Shem. But then I was saying earlier, you have to have a court order to get a DNA test. And I've seen many stations because they find out they're not Jewish. They're not from the line of Shem. They find out they're Turks and they're from the line of Japheth, which doesn't, I follow a converted faith as a Christian. But if you go to the line of Abraham, the strongest lines to the line of Shem are in Ethiopia today. And so they have all the original texts. They have these massive cathedrals built inside mountains, and they have specifically translated the texts. And if you look at ancient Persian, Indian, any of that kind of history, they know about the Ethiopian texts, and they openly discuss. And even the Jews of early times discuss the books of Enoch, the books of Adam and Eve. The book of Adam and Eve tells where that God cast Satan, the serpent, right? Because there was more than, like, even if you go to the Bible, the Elohim, the gods created the heaven and the earth, because our Bible begins after the fall of humanity. And then the gods manipulate us, right? So we're in the third incarnation right now of humanity under this system. So it gets really confusing, but as we begin to understand the true text and the true translations of the words, and that the serpent was cast out of the garden to India, and you'll see in India they have over 3,500 gods. They all have the snakes on everything and all the arms. So part of the text that you don't find in the Bible, according to the Bible, nobody knew where Jesus went, including all of his brothers and his mother. Where did he go for 20 years? He was in Persia studying with the Zoroastrian priests. And then he was in India. And you can go to those cultures, and they have the history of that time. Who were the three wise men? Were they Hebrews?
Oh, so that's a question. As far as I know from my research, it was more like 80 of them, and they came with a giant entourage and a giant army. And were they Hebrews? I don't think so.
They were not. They were Persians. They were Zoroastrian priests. And that's who the Magi were, magicians, Magi. So Christ went from the age of 13, according to the ancient texts, to study with the Magi in Persia. And this is why today the true religion that the Catholic Church is practicing is Mithraism, which is sun god worship, which is the ancient Persian religion of sun god worship. So I encourage everybody here to actually delve into the text, challenge your own life and what you're doing, and is it really what God is telling us he wants us to do and how he wants us to behave? And so that's what I like to do, because I believe the more understanding I have, it's creating a completely different perspective of my life and an amazingly, incredibly better understanding. Like the Bible right now is so fragmented. It's not like a series of stories. It's kind of here and there.
Yeah.
But if you put the books that have been removed in, the book makes so much sense. And then the book of Enoch. And a lot of people say, oh, that's not a canon, a canonical, I think they call it. Okay, so what is a canon?
I have no idea.
It's like a big piece of military equipment, right?
You mean a canon? I thought you meant
And who had that?
Scriptures.
Well, a canon, they say it's in the canons. That means it's the religious rules forced on you by force of the canon, right?
Oh.
Because the Catholics would cop your head off during the Middle Ages if you didn't convert to Christianity. And when they lost control of the Middle East, they financed Muhammad. And so the Muslim faith was financed by Muhammad. Muhammad originally, as he believes himself to be from the line of Abraham, declared himself to be the savior and tried to get all the Jews to worship him and have the Sabbath on Friday. Or I think the Saturday, he started that way, but nobody would follow him. He ended up slaughtering an entire city that opposed him. He changed it to Friday, which is the day that they worship now. Muhammad was married to a nun from Chaldifa. That area under Turkey used to be called Chaldea. And you can go read the letters. She was a 40-year-old nun. And that he didn't write the Quran because he couldn't read or write, like the supposed William Shakespeare couldn't read or write either. These things have all been altered. And a majority of the Quran that they see today, not the Book of Ishmael, was written by warlords, similar to the way at the meeting of Nicaea, the Catholic Church stepped in and started changing the meaning and extracting the structure and building the structure. That happened similarly about 200 years after Muhammad. And that's why there's a lot of anti-Semitism, because in the beginning, Ishmael comes from the line of Abraham, so he himself is a Jew. So
very interesting. You know, I love how on the screen you have that you're a political historian, because you really are. You're a wealth of information, Simone. And Meg, I saw that too. She just said it. You're a wealth of information.
I hope I'm not challenging or hurting anyone's feelings. My intention is not to do so. Our intention is to speak out, because we are in a corrupted system, and that's what they really talk about. That's the book of Enoch explains the corruption and the fallen angels and what happens. So they can't have it taken out because it takes their power away, right? And it also identifies, because the people who rule the world today themselves believe that they are descendants of the Nephilim, and that they are gods themselves. And you can read the Epstein files. I know we talked about that a little bit. Yes, but the same people accusing everyone of being racist and bigots and anti their religion talk about us. We are the Goyim. They have the right to kill us, murder us, steal from us, and they openly discuss it. And I just saw that Mendelssohn was arrested yesterday in England. So that's a big arrest.
Yes, it is.
They arrested the guy he was convicted, what I was talking about in the tribunal. Yes. Where the priest brought the Catholic Church keeps detailed records of all their crimes. So there was actually literally a book. And when I was living in Europe, and this Italian girl disappeared from the Vatican, and she was the daughter of, and so they found out what happened to her. Everyone thought she'd been murdered, because apparently when you attend one of these ninth circle cults and you won't do it, they immediately murder you and eat you, according to the books, right? So all of these crazy things, that's why these people seem to have no empathy or compassion for us. And they are assuming they are the deceivers. And that's what we're all told throughout history, throughout the Bible, to watch for the deceivers and watch a man's deeds, not what he's saying in his mouth.
Exactly. And when I hear this too, it takes me back to the situation that you're in right now. I see a beautiful background behind you, but we're seeing all types of bombings and smoke and things on fire. And so with the cartel then, Simone, who is it that's really behind this? From what you're hearing with boots on the ground, is this a U.S.-backed operation to get rid of him?
Well, I've heard from my intelligence U.S. connections that it's an FBI joint thing. The head of Mexico, the president of Mexico, recently spoke out saying it would violate the civil rights of the cartel members. Do you remember hearing that on the news?
Yes.
Because she was to arrest them, but they can chop up your children and sell them for their harvested organs, and that's no problem. So the first day we woke up, there was a lot of noise. One of my young friends, she lives over, it was more concentrated in the actual Mexican areas, where, parts of the area, because there's a big tourist area. So there's little pockets here.
Yeah.
And definitely when we woke up, we are kind of at the very tail end of town to the road that goes out. But all day we just sat on the hillside and we could see the fire starting everywhere. There was some rockets. And then about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, a few military people showed up in helicopters, and they just kind of cruised around. And a little later, I think in the next morning, so there was still fires going. It's still smoky in the air, so I can't see all the way out, but they've let people come out and the curfew's been called off. So I know because I saw them clearing the roads. And like last night, we went down to town. Most of the restaurants were closed. I think there was just one restaurant, but people are in hotels. They had to let a few of the restaurants open because there's 55,000 Canadians living here, and a lot of them are on vacation. So the stores were closed, and the OXXOs, which were the target, again, they're all the corner markets. So people couldn't even get milk or eggs. So like late night at the event, one of the OXXOs near us opened, and there was a very orderly line. It was all men. There's like in the last 2 days, there was no women out. There was just no women out when you walked around. Today, it was kind of back to normal. I walked to town this morning, just kind of wanted to see what was going on. But I don't know that the cartel, it's not over. And you were asking who did it.
Why would our FBI join in with the Mexican government to take this cartel, this drug lord out?
Because he's the head of the human smuggling operations for the CIA. The United States is funded and is funding most of the terrorist organizations. John McCain and Obama funded ISIS. John McCain and Mitt Romney funded the Orange Revolution and the Clintons in Ukraine. So since the end of World War II, these operatives that were primarily extracted Nazis, there was 800,000 Nazis that disappeared from Germany within 2 weeks, and they were extracted and put into high levels of government. The Nazi Party did not lose the war. The Germans lost the war. They extracted them and put them all over. You can look at James Comey, and you can look at most of those people in the FBI and John Podesta, and you can look up the names of Hitler's generals, and they pretty much coincide. And if you can find their pictures, they are obviously related. They look alike. So this isn't anything new. Like de Blasio in New York, his name isn't de Blasio. I'd say most of the people that that are in these situations today are predominantly members, because socialism is communism, really, right? And that is the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is the one heading the New World Economic Forum. The Vatican system, the beast system, is the one who's leading to the New World Order. And if you read their doctrine, I'm going to be at an event next week, and I'm doing the United Nations and how their doctrine is affecting our children. And the United Nations founding principle is to remove the male-female gender, to legalize pedophilia. If the children like it, it's okay, right? So this is a doctrine. We can go to Planned Parenthood, and you can see the Children's Bill of Rights and their rights to sexual enjoyment, and to destroy the family, to bring about one world government, one world religion, and one world military. And my question is, because they say religion is the reason we all fight. And so why do we need a world military if we don't have religion and no one is fighting anymore? So they openly discuss the fact that they are bringing about the world. And I used to work in Geneva, and there's a sign right on the United Nations that says, those who do not serve Lucifer shall not enter here. And the founding document of the United Nations is called the Lucifer Trust. And those were channeled documents from Aleister Crowley, if you know, he's a warlock, right?
Right.
Are we there? Are you losing us?
So you froze for a bit, but you're back. Whenever you started talking about how he was a warlock.
Okay, you were frozen too. That was going on. I was saying that the founding document of the United Nations is called the Lucifer Trust. They call it the Lucius Trust now because they got so much backlash. But Lucifer is the ancient, what did they call Venus, right? Because this is divine feminine worship, right? That's why priests wear dresses and judges wear dresses, because they work in this system and they're embracing their divine feminine. So the Venus worship, we called it Venus, but before we called that planet Venus, it was known as Lucifer, because it's the morning star and the evening star, right? When they call it Star of the Morning, when you hear the translations. So it gets really confusing, but we're in this time now, and they created computers, and sorry, it's a little windy. I don't mean to keep touching my face.
Oh, no, you're fine. It looks beautiful.
They created this reality for us, and they want us to live in it, and they want us to movies like The Matrix, and that The Matrix is a movie. When you understand The Matrix, all of the names are the Roman gods' names. It's a modern movie. If you understand Roman theology and the New World Order and all that, The Matrix, one time, I never saw The Matrix. I was living in communist Russia when it came out. We didn't even have anything to go see at the movies. And I finally watched it in a 4-part, like I got a videotape thing because everyone's always talking about it. And I was doing the, research on The Matrix. And I watched that movie a bunch of times because it has super deep meaning if you understand the occult, if you understand Roman mythology, and you understand the matrix that they're representing. Because in the movie, they're all in the womb, right? They're all connected to this main frame, right? And they have those pods that the people are in the womb. So that's why they call it the Matrix. It's not a movie. It actually refers to the female reproductive organ.
So I keep having even more questions. Since you're in Mexico, I can't get Mexico off my mind until I have different questions settled in my mind. And so is the FBI now going to be taking over and determining who's going to lead the cartel in Mexico, do you think?
No, I don't think that's what it is. I think that because the Mexican government, there's only certain teams, and our government too have been infiltrated, right? And they're not on the same. So I think every country in the world, the good people are working together to bring some of these things down. They've also got the World Cup coming here in May, which is a huge event. But like the Super Bowl, it's one of the largest human trafficking. And there's a lot of things that are legal here in Mexico that are not legal in the United States. So the World Cup is even more attracting perverted people from all over the world because of what's available easily here in Mexico. And that's interesting that you asked me about that. I was asking the young girl and what they thought about. And she says, well, we don't understand what goes on. And I was explaining to her, well, some of the men come down here and you can tell what they're down here doing because they're coming down here on a sex vacation for something they can't get at home. And when you walk on the beach in Puerto Vallarta, the men come by and they say, anything you want, we've got it. Wow. So it's open here. You can also get a lot of the cartels here are involved with the Chinese that are bringing in all of the stuff to make the fentanyl. They're also heavily involved with the Cubans. So we can see some presence of them here, which again is an arm of the political system of the communist people. And they're trying to put everybody under this system. So Mexico is a beautiful country. I was, like I was saying earlier, San Francisco and LA are empty right now. Before this happened, this is a really nice time of year. So a lot of Mexican families have taken their vacation. So we've been to a bunch of the beach. The towns are super crowded. The economies are booming. There's a lot of restaurants. There's a lot of new businesses. I don't see any vacancy like we see on commercial spaces in California where I live. When you go to strip malls, you go into, I think San Francisco's got a 40% commercial vacancy rate right now. Wow. So whatever our government's doing is driving a lot of industry and people here. And majority of people here in Canada right now, they have no intention of ever returning to Canada, A, because of the expense, and B, because of what's happened to Canada. And basically the Canadian government's been taken over by the Chinese when Trudeau was in power, when his father started the process, but he kind of finished it off. There's probably 500,000 Chinese troops in the northern part of Canada right now.
So, Simone, we're seeing bombing and cartel, like in military gear here in the States and social media, of course, the cartel and military gear that's more sophisticated than any military thing I've ever seen. And so the Canadians feel safer there than in Canada?
Well, there's different things going on. Canada trained 750 Chinese in frozen ground warfare while Trudeau was president. They sent Canadian troops to Canada, and they brought Chinese troops to Canada and Canada to China. The military was totally opposed to it, but they had to go with presidential order.
So
along our borders. So one of the biggest threats we're dealing with today is actually coming through Canada. Since World War I, the Chinese have had the plan to come into over the frozen ground through Canada. So they're literally there right, because the Chinese took over all the mines.
So I'm hopeful that her internet unfreezes, so that way we can hear more of her story. She is a wealth of information. Oh, lost her feed. That was a lot of information. I sat here mesmerized during that entire conversation with Simone's knowledge of history and world events. She has an amazing show on Rumble at Lost in the Translation. I've been on her podcast before, and she's very heavily connected with a lot of deep intel. And I'm hopeful. I'm going to stay on for a few minutes, hopeful that she comes back on to continue sharing. I'm not sure. She got totally kicked off, so we're going to try. I find it very encouraging that the just different things I want to touch on that she said, very encouraging about the ICE raids taking out the cartels in the United States of America. I know that the cartel is very pervasive throughout the United States and in all of our geographic areas. And so that's reassuring to know that that's been their primary area that they're targeting. And I find it also very reassuring that the head of the cartel was taken out. And I'm going to have Jack Donna on tomorrow. I've had him on the past. He is very deep in military intel and very much aware of what is happening with boots on the ground with the cartel war going on in Mexico that they're saying could possibly bleed over into the United States. We know that a couple of years ago, the cartels attacked El Paso with drones. And now we have seen the Mexican military take out this large drug lord in Mexico. We know that our Navy SEALs trained the military before this operation that took him out. We know that he was captured. We know that his second in command was also taken out. Jack's going to come in tomorrow and talk about the four top cartel people that are now vying there for leadership. The cartel has been a gigantic problem to the United States for a long, long time because they are the major push behind the trafficking and the fentanyl, the deaths of many, many, many U.S. citizens. And so now we're going to see what President Trump is going to do about this and has been doing. I did a show on Sunday where I talked about that I did not think it was any coincidence that the assassination attempt was on the same day. So you made it back. I've been
Okay,
chatting.
sorry, it just totally went down. Maybe they don't want me talking about Canada. So you were asking me about Mexico. I don't. Do you watch David Nino Rodriguez? He's been reporting for
he's a friend. Yeah.
He's been reporting for 6 or 7 months where he could see the military lineup across Juarez, where he lives, in the mountains. If you use telescopes, you can see not only Mexican military, but Chinese military. And it's well documented that a good chunk, at least half of the weapons, you could literally go on and watch them unloading the weapons from the US and Europe and from Afghanistan and the Ukraine. And they was sold to the cartels. That's why some of them are more well equipped. So yes, that all was happening. The actual action was about 60 miles from here in a smaller village. And so what happened with this is they wanted to create a backlash so the emergency vehicles and stuff couldn't, because there's only one road in and one road out. They just built a big highway.
Wasn't that terrifying for you, Simone, to be trapped and not be able to even leave because there were burning vehicles?
I just had faith. that things were going to happen. I've been in more dangerous situations in other
Yes,
countries
you
over
have.
my life, and I was of course fearful because I have been in dangerous situations. But what was really going on is a battle between the cartel. The cartels themselves announced if anybody was hurt, the people would be shot on the spot. So the cartels don't want the backlash from the regular people. This was a power struggle. This guy's been taken out. So the government entities that are corrupt and the other cartels are vying for who's going to control what territory. So that's how it's been explained to me. It's not necessarily, we're going to have different issues up towards the border where there is different, but here it would destroy the Puerto Vallarta economy for years if anything happened to a Canadian or American down here. So just like any country, you have to be careful. I used to travel in the Middle East and, with my light hair, and you have to be observant of people's customs. If the women are covering their hair, cover your hair. It's not about feminism or anything like that. When you go to someone else's place, you need to respect it. Otherwise, you're going to draw unwanted attention to yourself. I'm not saying it's people's fault for that. I'm just saying be aware of where you're at. And right here in town, luckily my boyfriend's brother has a jet and a yacht. So we were thinking, well, if we had to really emergency evacuate, we could probably do that. But again, we couldn't get to the airport. And the harbor was closed off because you don't know if the Navy's coming in or the cartels got their own boats out there and you're just going to get hijacked. So the best thing to do is just to stay in place. And we have, as you can see, we have a really nice, walled in area here. And we just stay out of the way so they can get the cartels and they can get people handled. And it's kind of funny because here, the whole town of Puerto Vallarta is run by the cartels.
Yep, there she goes again. Hopefully she'll be back. I personally find it amazing that there are Chinese military and people aren't. There you are.
Sorry, I'm not sure what's happening.
No, you're fine. I was just telling everyone, one thing that I can't wrap my mind around is there's Chinese military and cartels that are very dangerous, and yet people feel safe there. I can't wrap my mind around it, Simone. It doesn't sound safe.
Well, and again, I hadn't felt the intimidation like when I was living in Russia and they stormed the Capitol, the White House. I was actually downtown that day and the troops came down the street. And I was scared then because I didn't know how I was going to get out to where I'm at. I'm an American. I'm by myself. I don't speak Russian. The tanks came right. I was literally at a restaurant across from the White House. I was in Venezuela when Chavez took over there. My stepson married one of Chavez's opposition. So I was definitely scared then because I didn't know if they were just going to march up the street and take us. So I felt more protected here. And the Canadian people seem to be not very stressed. And I have friends who vacation here. And once a month, there'll be a shootout. Everybody just goes in their house. They let them shoot out. Then they go back out 2 hours later. So it's more of a normal thing here. My friend surfs down in Zihuatanejo, and he's been going there for years. He goes, oh, yeah, there's a shootout once a week in the main square, and everybody just closes their thing, and then they open them up. So I believe that God is watching over us, that he has,
Amen.
like you, probably
Amen.
many people watching us. God is our protection, and we have to do what's right. And we're here for this certain place and this certain time. One of the powerful things is I met some young Mexicans who really want to hear God's word. So maybe that's the reason I was here today, to share with them. And one of them was interviewed on Paul Preston's Agenda 21. I know you've been on that show before. We did a really good interview with her tomorrow. If anybody wants to watch that, she has the Mexican opinion of what's going on. And a lot of Mexicans want the Americans to come here. Just like they're Chinese people were demonstrating, come here, take out our president. Other countries, after our news wasn't covering it, but I watched news from all over the other world, and other countries were begging them to come. So there's the Mexican people who, of course, are proud and they have a beautiful country, a beautiful culture, but they're controlled by these same people. There's 185,000 cartel members, and they control a country of millions and millions of people. Kind of the same way we're under threat right now,
That's
right?
right.
And
Yes,
our
that's
cities have been
right.
taken over, and everything that our CIA and our illegal government operations and black ops have done all over the world has now been turned on us. And we're seeing what those black ops and all those traitors in our country and the people who really don't work for us, they work for the foreign hostile corporation of the City of London, controlled by the Vatican. The City of London owns all the Federal Reserves in the world, as we were discussing earlier, and they really control our economies, our politics. And as you're seeing in the Epstein files, every single person that was going insane against Trump for the last, because they all loved him, if you remember, they all loved him. And now if you read the Epstein files, you can literally check off a list: insane against Trump, insane against Trump, right?
That's right.
And so I believe that we're in the end. Like a lot of times people believe we're in the apocalypse. I myself believe we're still in what they call the Grand Deception, and we're still in the midst of discovering what our reality is. And the things like we're in a realm where we're controlled by frequency. And that's why they're trying to affect our frequencies so much with 5G and 6G, because our bodies are electrical systems. We're basically an energetic being, and they're trying to interfere with that. And that's when they're raping children that are young, they're literally stealing the energy that emanates from young children. And you'll see a lot of times, I mean, you still look beautiful, but I've known, people and just like everyday people that were molested and as children, and you can see it. They've got the panda eyes, right?
Yes.
Those kind of things that are symptoms. And if you remember in fashion in the 90s, they were doing all the models would have the dark stuff under their eyes, right?
Yes,
They would always
were.
have the signs, half the face. And you always see what you understand also is that a lot of our models that we see as women are men. And that's why they stand in all those weird positions. So you don't notice they have hips and that their shoulders are wider than their hips. Male and females have definite genetic differences. Their legs are shaped different. Their forearms are longer. A woman has a sway in her back where a man's back is straight. A lot of times you see the actresses, here's my bone structure. I'm a size 4. Here's where my bone's in. But if you see a lot of actresses today, their bones go all the way to here, to the end of their shoulder. You know how most of them have, like, they look so skinny?
Yeah.
Because they're predominantly men in drag. And so that's why there's so much gender confusion, because they have men living as women that in the public eye, this is part of the satanic thing. Lucifer was transgendered, right? If you ever look at the Baphomet symbol, do you ever see the Knights Templar on a red and white check floor, and they're carrying on poles, they're carrying the Baphomet, right? So he has a breast and a penis. Yeah.
Yes. So Simone, I will talk about that. Whenever I was little and being trafficked in the adrenochrome harvesting rooms underneath the trafficking house, and when they were doing the adrenochrome harvesting at the U.S. University Medical Center, Baphomet was there. I saw him, and he did not have mixed genitalia. I saw him. And I know that all the pictures say that, but I would know, unfortunately, when I was little, what was.
Yeah, well, you would know. So I'm just saying what the pictures represent.
Yes, yeah. And he did not have that. Now he was, everything, and he didn't have wings. So part of me kind of wonders if if there's been some, well, there has been deception with that. So I just wanted to throw that in as a side note. I don't mean to interrupt your flow, because you're.
Oh, no. Well, so when you understand when you understand the Genesis, there was numerous fallen angels. If you read the book of Enoch, and they all had different things. Like, we live in the United States, in California, and we're ruled by Azazel, who is the most vicious and the highest level. But Azazel wasn't the serpent in the garden. I forget what that guy, I think his name started with an H. So the fallen angels procreated. So there's different entities that control different parts of the world. That's why some are darker, much darker than other parts of the world. You can go into someone. Do you ever watch Jessie? She does decodes. And she talks about like how to, your state crest will tell you which fallen angel is in the ruling area.
Yes, she's a good friend. Yes, Jesse Saboter talks about that. Yes,
She's on
yes,
Paul's show a lot, and a lot of people ask me why I'm so sure about some of the things I'm sure, because I don't, of course, she's way beyond me, but I can see when they're coding and I can go look it up.
yeah,
Uh, Apple is the bite of the apple.
yes.
You know what, when you do Chrome, you know what the real program is called on Chrome? Adrenochrome.
Adrenochrome. Yes,
And
yes,
it's got the
yes.
666. Disney has the 666. So once you understand, they're telling you who are. Disney's on Ball Road in
Oh, I
Anaheim. We're
didn't
on
know
Ball
that.
Road down to
Wow.
33. 33 is where the fallen angels fell, on the 33rd perimeter where Mount Hermon is today. And the head of the United Nations is there on top of that mountain.
So much that, there's so many things, Simone, we've been deceived about, so much that we don't know, so much that's being exposed too. So in the time that we have left, let's flip to well, first of all, Mexico. Anything else you want to tell us about Mexico while we're listening? What it's been like there, what you've been hearing, what the people think are going to happen
Well,
next?
originally I had an amazing time. The people are amazing. They're very welcoming. I've learned a lot about like Spanish culture. We did a lot of hikes and things like that. So I'm very thankful for that. But it also it just reminds you how delicate life is and how things can change on a dime. And we have to fight against this dark energy before this is happening in all of our cities, right? Whatever's happening around the world is just a prelude for what they're bringing to us. We're kind of we're the last Christian nation on earth, and we're the final battlefield. And that's why they've been trying to take us down since the Civil War. This literally, we're literally in a plan that began after the Civil War, and it's culminating right now. So what I would say, one of the main things is this isn't a great movement forward for Mexico if they were able to take down the child trafficking cartels, because it's not just the Mexican children that are being harvested. They're harvesting children from China, the poor Asian countries, and all over Africa. Save the Children was okay, get this. I don't know if you know
No,
about Save the Children.
yes, but go ahead. My audience might not.
Okay. Well, Save the Children was, I think, established like by Epstein. Then the Clintons ran it. Then I think recently it's Meghan and Harry, and there's 170,000 children just in one country missing. And of course, they've found all these children misplaced. You can see Charlie Kirk's wife. I know that's a big controversy right now, but she was doing Romanian angels. If you look back in history, there was, after the war in Korea, there was the Korean angels. So all the wars, these are all the children that are being brought from other countries as orphans and being placed with high-level pedophiles and used in the CIA, as you know, in the CIA systems to blackmail,
Yes.
extort, and control our politicians. So I would just pray for the Mexican people. They have a lot of struggles going on in their own culture, and in that they themselves were conquered by the Spanish. A majority of people here are not Spanish. They're indigenous peoples. They have their own language, they have their own cultures, they have their own belief systems. So they have their own internal things going on. And they, again, are under the Jesuit King of Spain Vatican system. And that they're fighting the same deep state we're fighting. Theirs is just more in the open because they are controlled directly by the Jesuits, which of course California is today too. After the war with Mexico, um, the European powers came through Mexico and they tried to capture into the United States. They had that war because they wanted to infiltrate and reestablish the Jesuit structure in California after it became a state, and of course capture the gold that was here.
So, do you think that the cartel system will come down since they captured him, or is he just going to be replaced as the cartel continues on in the trafficking and the drugs?
Well, I think that he's going to probably already been replaced, so this isn't going to, but they're taking him out. I mean, they're so openly doing it now. They're so openly capturing children and harvesting their organ. You know, it just has to come to an end sometime for people.
That's right.
So I think that the awareness and even explaining it to young Mexicans, because they don't really understand. They're like, why do people come down here? Even when you're walking around in town, they have all the stem cell beauty products, which comes from aborted fetal tissue.
That's
It's
right.
illegal in the United States. You can come here and get the injections. And she's like, oh, I didn't know what those were. So you're even explaining to some of the Mexicans that are here what's going on, because they don't know. They're young moms. They're not involved. They're not spending money at the tourist locations.
Right.
But you'll see every other shop. And the other day I was walking by and this woman sprayed something on my face and she gave me a thing and it said Stemex on it. So somebody sprayed on my face a product made by that tissue. And of course, that all is a satanic concept. Abortion is satanic. They practice abortion as communion in the Church of Satan. You could go look that up. They were suing for their rights after Texas made abortion illegal.
That's
They
right.
were suing for their rights to continue abortions in their church. So people just don't understand what they're embracing. I was sad to hear recently that a young friend I had for years, a family friend, his wife is a Wiccan and they're open Satanists now in Denver, Colorado. They go to the Church of Satan and yeah, so this is alive and well. And there's also, the culture, the Incas and all that. That was all the ancient, you see all the Incas and the temples, all the child sacrifice, all the blood sacrifice. So this stuff isn't really that new to Mexico. America was known as Americus. If you go back to the Sumerian Egyptian tablets, and literally means land of the plumed serpent. A plumed serpent is a dragon. So they knew about America for a long time. The Catholic Church probably killed everybody when they came here and destroyed the history and claimed it as theirs. And so there's so many confused. We've been deceived so much. Like Americus literally means land of the plumed serpent. People were here for a long time. And as a young person, my mom used to take us traveling around the country. She was a real history buff. And we went to all these different places. And I'd been to Europe and I was like, these buildings look exactly like the San Francisco Cathedral looks exactly like Notre Dame. It's just smaller. How did they build that? Because if you grew up in California, they have the California Mission Trail, and supposedly Father Sarah, who didn't even have a horse, was able to build all these cathedrals with the who did he build it with, right? And
Right.
because they were there before. And, so our history has been completely distorted. Again, the book of Genesis is about our third incarnation of humanity. So there's a long history before that. Anytime you travel around the world, especially when you go to the Middle East, you just realize that the history that we're taught is completely opposite of the real history that we have. And what you also learn when you travel, history is different in every country. So obviously there's something going on. It's
Exactly.
different than what we're taught. So
Do you
I would
think I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask people to pray for everybody here in Mexico because I think they still have a battle ahead. And because the cartel is a huge money-making operation, there's going to be some financial impact for people on that too. So hopefully we're going to be able to save the children that are en route here. And people just have to become aware. And we're in the battle right now. The things that we've all talked about, end times, the things that we've been preparing for, whether end times is 5 years or 500 years, I don't know. But we're in that process right now. But the amazing thing, and Lucifer and Satan know this too, is God always wins.
Amen.
And right now, the deceivers are out there and they're deceiving us that they're going to win, and they're not. And so that's what we have to keep in mind. And so I see this as a biblical blowback, including here in Mexico. And it also, people in the United States and Canada and the West have to be aware of what their government has been doing all over the world in our name, and stand up against that wherever we can.
That's right. Absolutely. Where do you see Mexico heading next? What do you see? I've heard, well, I mean, even short term, I heard one of the airports is open. You said are you going to be flying out or?
Yeah, everything's back scheduled tomorrow. I just checked in right before I called you. I just checked in, so everything's good. The airports, they did have people at the airport, but they wanted to just cause confusion. And I think they wanted to delay any kind of military, and they wanted time for the people who didn't get arrested and caught to get away. We're right by the ocean, so they could have just been clearing to get down to the port. They were extracting. They didn't want the military. But again, the military didn't show up right away. So it almost, isn't that weird? I mean,
It is weird. I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, I don't know if like I said, there's elements, the Mexicans have their special forces and stuff. Those aren't the regular enlisted guys. You know, the difference between our Navy SEALs and, you know, the Mexican people have that too. So I think it was the higher elite groups. And also they're afraid of the cartels. You have to do service in Mexico. Okay. So people have to do, if you're an able bodied man, most countries have mandatory service. So it's not like the US where it's 1% of our population people who want to be there. They're not going to die for the cartel because, yeah. So I think there's a part of the fear of the cartels. And they know as military people, because when you walk around here, every corner, there's a guy hanging out. And it's a cartel guy, and he's just watching what's going on in the block, who's going in and out of the restaurants, making sure the taxis are doing what they're supposed to do, because the cartel really runs it. That's the backing, right? That's the backing for things. All the businesses, the bars here, the nightclubs. I mean, bars and nightclubs have always been a criminal front. It's not anything new. Go to San Francisco. You can go to all the speakeasies that were there. The same thing was happening. So I think there's an element of protection. And also, they may not have just been prepared. If it was a secret mission and the military and the government officials are involved, it was a surprise that they may not have been able to deploy that fast. So I'm really not sure. But I think there's a fear. Again, the cops don't make that much money. Their families aren't going to get that much money when they die. The forced military service, that's a military minimum money. So who are they fighting? Because they know the cartel's just going to regroup and come back out again. So, I mean, there's general fear. The girl that I did the interview with yesterday,
Yeah.
We didn't use her real name and we didn't show her face because we're concerned about her. And just her personal opinions might offend somebody. So we're very lucky that we still have the freedom of speech. And I would suggest that's something that people fight for in their local communities when they're trying to bully us or change our opinions or make us feel guilty for how we believe and what we think. And of course, God's people are under attack. We're in the battle right now. And many of the organized religion, everywhere from T.D. Jakes and the P. Diddy file to Joel Osteen. Every major political leader or political religious leader in the country today is under fire. So to me, that's good because God's church, and especially if you go back to the Ethiopian text, the original translated text, and you actually translate it to Hebrew, it was written in a language called Ge'ez, which was spoken at that time. So you have to understand ancient Hebrew. I've been studying that. I'm not Jewish myself, but if you really want to understand the word and the translations, that you need to do that. In the beginning, like with Cain and Abel, they say he slew him. And so a lot of people think that that means he sexually violated him in ancient Hebrew. And that's where we get spirit cooking from. Then he took his bones, if you ever hear about spirit cooking.
Yeah.
So if you read the ancient text, it's completely opposite of the sanitized text that we read today, for instance. And even it says King James Version. It doesn't say King James translation. It says version. So we just have to look at what we're seeing, and we have to seek truth. And we don't also need to argue about the Bible with each other, and one person says this and one person says that. God is the ultimate power, and our service and belief and practices of what he taught us is what's going to bring us to the Father. It's not all this other crazy stuff. And you're doing this and you're doing that, right?
Right. That's
Every
right.
one of us have to look deep within ourselves and find out. But we have to be our own critic, and we have to find out if we're really following the way. There's a lot of people who just go to church on Sunday, and the rest of the week, they're total jerks. I mean, I've been to church when people are like honking, like when they're parking or whatever. And I'm like, hello, you're at church. Let the old lady walk by.
I know. Whenever I'm out running, Simone, one of my most dangerous days is Sunday morning because people are in such a hurry to get to church. I have to really be careful when crossing the street.
God is everywhere. God is in us. The Holy Spirit resides in us. We have that spark inside us. And that's also what Jesus teaches us in the original text. And that's why they were so vicious changing it, because he teaches that God is within. We don't need a priest. We don't need a church. And not that those things aren't useful in our lives. He's saying, but that's not what God is really teaching us. It's that the divine spark is in all of us, and God is in us. God is within us. God is in everything we see and everything that is here. And we need to embrace that instead of looking outward.
Well, I have loved having you on the show today. I know we talk on the phone often and text, but I haven't seen you face to face for a while. And I was very concerned about you whenever you were telling me where you were.
Well,
So
thank you. And I'm just blessed that nothing worse has happened. And a lot of people who live here, they're like, yeah, this kind of stuff happens. So they just, like I said, they just go back to doing their business. And I think one of the things that's sad is I think that the car burnings were acts of war. So I don't think a lot of people are going to get their insurance covered for their cars. And they're literally holding guns to people's head and making them get out. And there's burned cars everywhere. So as you were saying, we were seeing that, but the cars only burned for so long. I mean, it was an organized thing because they came through the whole city and set them off pretty quickly.
so pre-planned and organized.
Well, I think that this was the response I don't think they planned it yesterday between the time that the guy got killed. This is what they planned on doing all over the United States too. That's why ISIS spent the last year taking those people out of the inner cities, because they were the cartels, and they were also handling all the human trafficking. San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco. I think San Francisco is a huge destination. And before Joe Biden was president, I actually looked up this law firm. I was looking for law firms that handled human trafficking just to see what they said on their website. Yeah. And according to their website, and once you understand what the elite are into, child sacrifice and that, the biggest destination for child trafficking was Washington, D.C., a 10 square mile radius, more than New York or Los Angeles. So as you know, you're very familiar with what goes on in D.C. and what goes on in the elite circles. So Washington, D.C., again, is not part of the United States. It's it's a city state of the Vatican. The politicians don't work for us. They work for the private foreign hostile corporation. Yeah,
that's exactly right. Do you think that the trafficking and the drug dealing we're going to start decreasing? We're going to see decreasing in the United States since ICE has been picking up the cartel?
I believe that we're going to see it, but the reality is the people, I guess this is one thing we didn't touch on, was pornography. Pornography is also an instrument. What was happening when Hitler came to power? The first thing he did, and I'm not agreeing with Hitler or whatever,
Sure.
The first thing he did, the epicenter of pornography and pedophilia was Berlin. And of course, the communists stayed there because that's part of their thing. So he made usury illegal. We're struggling right now with 28% interest rates. It destroyed the German economy. And he made pornography illegal. Within 6 years, it was profitable. And these things like human trafficking and child trafficking went way down. So again, throughout history, I remember my grandmother told me once about 20 years ago, she said, in school, we never learned about anybody they teach us about today as being the founding fathers, of being historically important people. She said we never learned about one of them. In 1914, when the war was over and our country was illegally passed to the Foreign Hostile Banking Corporation.
Yes.
People can read the Creature from Jekyll Island. That goes into detail when the Rothschild foreign banking took over our country. They also burned all of our books.
I heard you say that on another show with Paul Preston. I had not heard that before.
I believe it was called Project Leviathan. All these projects have different names, but you can look into it. You have to go back. I remember even my great-grandfather was a surgeon, and my cousin Drake owns a company that was making a lot of organic solutions to medicine. And he took my cousin to the old City of Los Angeles library, and they'd taken all the medical books out. But the old books, my great-grandfather knew they were still in the bottom because he was a researcher himself. So he took my cousin Drake down there, and he saw all the old medical books and all the old solutions. And again, because after they made liquor illegal in the United States in the 1930s, they also made marijuana illegal. And marijuana was actually in the holy anointing oil in tradition. It's been used throughout history in medicine. And so they made it illegal. And then in 1930s, the Vatican, Puerto Rico Corporation brought in big pharma, and which is killing all of us. So
That's
a lot of things
exactly right.
happen in these times, and that's the way they've taken over our country. That's the way they've made us unhealthy. And they've implemented their system where you no longer treat an illness and try to find out what's wrong with you. You just cover the symptom up with some drug. And one of the reasons that they killed, who was the basketball player? Was it Kobe Bryant?
Yeah. In the
Okay,
helicopter.
Kobe Bryant had a product called Black Mamba. And he tested his product in an outside lab. Most of it was heroin. Most of all, they're finding out that in all the reason there's such a big demand for heroin is because they're putting it in all the medication, and all the Swiss companies own all the different big pharma companies. They're putting heroin in there. That's what's making you feel better. That's why you withdraw so terribly when you're on some kind of medications, because you
Oh,
withdraw from your
Simone. You are
Yeah.
full of so many truth bombs today. I could do shows.
But the other thing Kobe Bryant was doing, he was going to expose the steroids, because the same company, Swiss company that provides all the steroid testing, he was supposed to go to court in a lawsuit against the biggest pharmaceutical company, the mother company, and the following week after he died. So he, his wife was a Santeria. I mean, he was heavily involved in the Black Mamba. He's got the snake books. He was definitely involved. He was a sacrifice. He was 33. His daughter was 13. It was a blood sacrifice, but it was also because sometimes people get into these situations and they don't realize they're just puppets and they can be released. They can destroy you in a day. And so these things have been culminating for a while. And when you start to look at everything and you trace it back to the money and the Vatican and the corporate system, the Vatican was the first corporation. Corporation itself means dead body. So in their system, we're all dead cargo. They own our birth certificates and we're dead. We have no rights. We have no feelings. And so that's why you sign a death pledge, a mortgage, death pledge, when you buy a house, because you're borrowing money from your birth certificate because they're taking the money from your birth certificate. And when you get a loan or you get a marriage license, you're asking permission from your owner to do those things.
So as we close out, I would like to, you are such a wealth of information. Tell us the hope side. What do you see in Mexico or the United States, especially, knowing your vast knowledge in political, history and current events, and how you can tie that together so beautifully? Where do you see us in the United States now, and where do you see us going that gives you hope?
I believe we're in the battle right now, and I have hope that eventually God always wins. And so that's what keeps me going. That's why I do what I'm doing. That's why I'm spending vacation doing podcasts instead of relaxing, because I believe that it's going to take all of us. And throughout history, society has gone this way and society has gone that way. And it's us that have to pull ourselves out. We have to rely on God and we have to rely on each other. I'm doing an upcoming event in our symbology. It's a human trafficking event. I think you may be live streaming it. And I wanted to say March 7th and 8th in North Carolina at the Horseshoe Ranch. Bold and Awake is the lady who's sponsoring the event. And our concept of the event, we have a frequency device that levels the frequency in different rooms and areas, because again, we live in an energetic field. And if you have negative energy, it's going to affect your system. But our symbology is the sunflower, because in the day, the sunflower turns its face to the light. But when it gets dark and there's no sun, there's no illumination, the sunflowers turn to each other and they draw the light from each other. And that's what I think we should do. Right? The light is above us, but the light is inside of each one of us. Amen. And we have to turn to each other and we have to rely on each other. God uses man to fulfill his duties. Satan's using man to fulfill his duties right now. So why don't we use ours? Because there's way more of us than there is of them. Most people are good. Most people are giving and most people are kind. And they've just tried to convince us through media and everything that everything's dark. I don't know if you watch TV lately. Oh my gosh, everything's so depressing. Everything's so violent.
So Simone, I am down to watching that home channel where you watch people repair their houses, and that's it. And,
Right.
and even with that, the commercials are so wicked and evil. I'll pre-record and fast forward through commercials, and that's what I'm down to. I used to watch the Animal Planet, but I'm not going to watch these naked and afraid satanic shows. I'm not going to do that. Watch that porn on TV. So you know, I, when it comes to television, no. So I don't see anything except.
When you have to be conscious, you have to be conscious of what you're putting in your mind,
That's
what
right.
you're doing. And like, I don't watch violence on television, and people get mad at me because we'll be watching a movie and I'll get up and I'll walk out. It's
Yes.
making us immune. We have our 4-year-olds playing games about killing people. When you're over at your friend's house, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. We could never say that to our siblings, but kids see it in movies and they see it. And that's the games that they're playing. So there's this, before the Freemasons, there were the oculists, right? And their focus, you see always the big eye in the middle of the head, because we have our pineal gland, which was our connection to God, has been calcified.
That's
Right?
right.
They talk about how we're separated, but these people literally used to go around doing faux surgeries, like performances on stage. It was like an illusion, because they believed if you could change what the eye saw, you could change what the brain thought. And that's literally, the Nazis developed television in the 1920s to change the thought process of the German people.
That's fascinating. Yes. Well,
Tell my vision.
exactly. That is exactly right. That's
Watching programs,
where the
right?
brain.
We're being programmed.
That's
So
right.
be careful what your kids are putting in their mind. And just remember that people in Mexico and people in Canada and people in China, we're all essentially alike. We all want the same things. It's just a small percentage of the people that want all these crazy things in all those countries. So the whole world's under change right now. The question is the direction. And I believe that God wins. And so that's why I'm confident in what I'm doing. And I feel fear. Like if there was military around, I would have felt fear. But while I was here, I was scared, but I've been fearful in more dangerous situations, and I just really wasn't feeling that, because the cartel announced too, anybody that shot somebody, they would be shot themselves. So there was kind of they don't want the backlash of the people against them either. Right? Their war is with each other and with the government or with the U.S. military. So we'll see how it pans out. I think that there was probably a lot of other different arrests around the world. We're only seeing a very small percentage, because if they tell everybody and translate it, then they're not going to be able to come arrest the other people. And over the last few years, it's like a bottom up thing. This person's getting taken out. This person's getting taken out. As we move up the food chain, the arrests are becoming more open. But it doesn't mean that these things haven't been going on for a while.
I agree with you, Simone. I was just thinking about this morning. It's probably why the Lord brought this to mind, because he knew we'd be talking about it. This is probably a year ago. I was sitting here working in my house, and all of a sudden I heard, these low-flying planes in the United States as part of our good guy military operation. And they can only fly this low under presidential order by the commander-in-chief, President Trump. And it was flying so low. I was in my house, and I thought, it's going to hit my house. Something is crash landing. That's the sound it made. It was close. I thought, there's a plane crashing. And all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, I lost all my electricity. And I thought, but the plane didn't crash, but the sound was over. And I thought, that makes no sense. And my electricity was out 15 minutes, popped back on. That was it. So I was talking to Michael Jaco, a friend of mine who's a former Navy SEAL, CIA operative. And I said, what was that? And he said, Lynn, that was a military operation in your neighborhood. That's
what I was going to say.
There's he said that they do that. They fly in low, they take out the power grid, they go in, they nab who they're going to nab, and they pull out, and the good guys. And so I agree with you, Simone. That's going on, and I'm amazed. This is one thing I rejoice in the Lord over. The evil people that are being taken out, that every now and then we get glimpses of. Like when I was in my house that day, something was happening in my community. The fact that we the people are able to go along with a fairly normal life. Now I know problems happen and things are happening, and I don't negate any of that, but what things could actually be like here in the United States, compared to what they are. We're really leading fairly normal lives moving forward as all these evil people are being taken out under our noses. I am so impressed with the military operation going on within the states. I'm so proud to be a citizen.
Well, and like I said, a majority of the people are good. And we are always focused. There's only bad people. There's only bad people. But throughout time, it's because the bad people are in charge of the media and they're in charge of publishing the books. Right?
That's
Benjamin
right.
Franklin wasn't a savior to our nation. He was a triple spy. He was the one who worked against us in the revolution. He had a printing press, right? He was writing everything. What are they going to do? They're going to print money, right? So he was a triple agent. You can go to the British and the French museums. They've got all of his internal documents. His assistant was charged with treason, and he fought for his, but it ends up historically that it was actually him who was the spy.
See, that's fascinating. You're just such a wealth of information, Simone. I've so enjoyed our conversation.
Me
I'm
too.
going to have you back on because I know that there's so much more that I would love to hear about.
Well, and maybe we can touch base in a bit, and we'll have my friend who's from Mexico, and we'll talk to her. And young Mexicans feel hopeful. They have a lot of autism here right now. My friend has autistic. So I've met so many people because they did the vaccination and all of that has been done. And right now, I forgot to mention this. One of the other things they're doing right in the middle of this crisis is they're forcing all the school children to get vaccinated.
I heard you say that on the show.
Yeah, for measles, which isn't a problem. Everyone's like, we don't even know anyone who ever had measles. But if you listen to Bill Gates, he's been talking about the measles outbreak, Fauci, all those guys. And it's just another way to control the population and dumb people down. And people, I mean, it takes a lot of time, and there's no services here. Like if you have a disabled child, it's not like the United States. There's nothing for people. They do have some programs if you live in the right area in the schools. But if you can't afford to send your kid to a private school, it's going to be pretty tough. So we're fighting the battle every day. And I believe that it's going in the right direction because their brains are waking up. And so many people I know have come to God. I used to know this guy that was a friend of mine. He was into drugs. He was a motorcycle. He swore all the time. Now I see his Facebook page. He's like, God is alive. I've just known so many people that have come to the Father, right? So I think that they want to convince us that it's going the other way. And sometimes it is, but it's also going the other way too. And our thought and our process and our prayers, and they rule us under Roman law. If we don't push back, we consent. And I do not consent.
I do not consent either. I hear what you're saying too about there's so many more of us. I was out today in the community, and after all of these, horrific reveals from the Epstein files, of course, I lived through quite a bit of that, so I understand. But it's still to hear it being spoken of in public blesses my heart so much. And to see people being horrified and shocked at what's happened to the children, I never got to see that when I was little.
Right, right.
And so to see the reaction of normal, good people, I was out today looking around, and I thought that the enemy has tried to divide we the people on so many trivial, petty lies.
Mm-hmm.
They're the evil ones. And I could feel this surge of goodness growing between people, because as we're all waking up to the Epstein files and the people who think there are betters, entertainment, politicians, judicial, whoever they are, media.
False idols.
They're
idols. That's who they are.
Exactly. And we are not like them. And I could just feel this warmth beginning, it's God between people to say, we're all, on the same side. We may have some differences, but they're petty. Look at who the enemy is. That's the evil, not these petty little fights that they've had us in that mean nothing to keep us divided so they can continue eating the children.
That's exactly right. They keep us divided so they can get away with what they're doing.
That's right.
Exactly what it is. And once you understand that, you have to look within yourself too. because you have to confront your own. You're mad at your sister-in-law because she's said this, and you're mad at your nephew because he doesn't agree with this. We have to look inside ourselves, and we have to introspect. So all of us have to create the environment that we want to have, because everybody wants to point, oh, you're doing that, you're doing that. We have to look deep within ourselves. It's just like Kennedy made a famous speech, and he said we have to think about our attitude toward war, because man created all of our problems, therefore he can fix his own problems. And that war says a lot. Like you always see everyone, oh, let's go to war, let's go to war. They're oh, let's bomb Iran, let's do this. These are all people who've never been in a war zone. And
Right.
many of them who are too old to go to war themselves, they're thinking of sending all of our youth. So we really need to, again, look within ourselves when it comes to war, when it comes to our attitude, maybe just keeping our mouth shut sometimes, because sometimes it's not going to change anything. Not shut in a negative way, but just close it down. That negativity is over. That person's never going to be convinced by me. Let's just let it go, because it really does. It causes a disturbance in the vibration, because fear is a vibration. We live in an electrical current world, and we're all in vibration, and fear disrupts the patterns, right? If you understand how frequency travels. So they are intentionally doing that so we can block our innate skills. Over time, humans, I believe, used to be able to telecommunicate. We didn't need to talk. We didn't need to. We've been really, really dumbed down. So we just have to be aware of that and find our higher self, I guess, is my answer.
Well, and that's coming back. You know, I went to heaven a lot when I was little. I still do. They don't move their lips there. I just,
Oh, right.
spoiler alert.
No.
They
And
don't. I mean, they
cats.
don't. And from my,
Known twins don't talk.
yeah.
I have friends who have twins. They never talk to each other, but they know exactly what each other wants. So, you know, maybe they have a closer symbology. But all of these things is every day you wake up, and especially when you start to understand the word better and the actual translations, your whole eyes open up, because it really is a lot different than we think that it is. So God is there. That's all I remember. I'm not going to get caught up in what man is telling me.
Amen. Well, God bless you. It's so good to see you. So good to see
too.
you. You said you were safe, but it's just good to see that you're safe. I'm happy to hear you've been able to check in, and it sounds like you'll be leaving tomorrow.
Yep.
And get back to the United States. So God bless you for everything that you've shared. I look forward to having you back on.
All right. Well, thank you, Lynn. And thanks to all your listeners. And I look forward to being on sometime soon. And like I said, maybe in about 6 weeks or something, we'll do a follow-up to see what actually happened down here and how it affected the actual Mexicans. Because, of course, you know, media wants to hype up everything. So we want to be aware. We want to empathize and care about people where things are happening too. But we have to understand the job of the media is to keep us in a 24-hour fear cycle. So I refuse to be fearful, and I just have faith.
Amen. Amen. God bless. So to everybody listening, until next time, this is Lynne Scott Haggerman, where light is breaking through and truth is rising, and so are we.
Light breaks the shadow of the weary heart. Truth cuts the dark like a flaming dart.